70% of PGA Tour players are using the Pro V1 or the Pro V1X. Is this because they're being paid to do so, or is it just genuinely the best golf ball on the market? In this video, I'm going to review the new 2025 Pro V1 and Pro V1X to have a look at the differences in technology and the performance. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to compare the new ball to last year's ball to see if there is actually any difference. And I think you're going to be quite interested in those results. But right now I'm on the first tee at Fulford Golf Club. I'm going to hit some drives with both balls and let's just see how they compare. Right, so just to pre-warn you, I have already collected some data on these balls. I've hit some 50-yard shots, some 6-irons and some drivers, just so that we can have a look at some data in more detail, because just me hitting shots on the course isn't like a full review. So I do have some data to show you in the video. We are here on the first at Fulford. The sun is out, so that's amazing. I've got too many layers on because I'm a bit hot. But yeah, so I'm just going to hit some shots with the new Pro V1X. So this ball's supposed to fly a bit higher and probably spin a fraction more than the Pro V1. But this ball is supposed to go a little bit further than the previous one. The new tech in this is designed for like more distance on the long shots, but more spin on the short ones into the green, and just a better feel overall. Now the Pro V1X, when I was testing it, did feel quite firm. Certainly interesting to compare them, sort of Pro V1 versus Pro V1X. That was well hit. That was perfect. There's definitely a distinction in the sound between the two balls, and I do think they feel completely different as well. The Pro V1X definitely feeling a bit firmer, and a bit sort of faster off the face, certainly with the irons and the wedges. They're going to be right next to each other. So both these balls feature a new, faster, high gradient core, which is where the new speed is coming from and the added distance. The Pro V1 sort of is what I've used generally from all of my playing life, so I am quite used to it, and I did really like how soft it felt off the face on really the wedge shots and the mid-iron shots. You can't tell me that those don't sound completely different. And it definitely does feel like the Pro V1 is softer. It sort of almost feels like it's stuck on the face for a fraction longer. I'm sure it isn't, but that's just how it feels to me. And we're away. All of those have been pretty quality strikes, so it'll be interesting to see the difference in the distance once we get up there. So just looking at some data with those driver shots, so in the testing I've done, I've actually found that the balls are pretty much doing what they're supposed to be doing. So the Pro V1 is flying with less spin, the Pro V1X is flying with more spin, and that's because of the difference in the dimples. So the Pro V1 has 388 tetrahedral dimples, where the Pro V1X is 348, so that 40 less means the ball is just going to spin up a bit more spin, more peak height. Now the peak height hasn't quite sort of worked out in the shots I've hit. They've both basically flown exactly the same, but the Pro V1X has spun more and therefore has gone slightly shorter. So I've hit the Pro V1 with an average of 282 carry, and versus the Pro V1X, which was 279.8, so pretty similar. And then total distance with the Pro V1, 301 yards versus the Pro V1X is 290. 7.5. So those are pretty close. Now Titleist is saying that there really shouldn't be any difference in the distance of the two balls. They are supposed to perform as well as each other, but with two very different flights. So it is interesting to see that the Pro V1X did spin, you know, about 100 RPM more for me, just off this sort of small sample size, but that's enough to make the ball stop a little bit more when it lands, land at a slightly steeper descent angle, which is going to help you into the greens, especially for those players who don't hit it very high. So if you're someone who's looking for either to hit it slightly lower or to hit it slightly higher with more spin, there is a ball here for you, and they do definitely do different things. Right, let's go hit some mid-irons to see how they feel on like a 6-iron or an 8-iron, and just have a look at the numbers for that. And don't forget, we're going to look at the difference between the new Pro V1 and the old Pro V1 at the end of the video. Right, we're at mid-iron distance here, so I've got my 6, and we're about 170 yards away from the flag. Now, when I hit these balls in testing, I did find that I hit them slightly differently to what they're supposed to do. So the Pro V1 sort of went a bit higher. Now that could be entirely due to user error, but I felt like the strikes were pretty good. The Pro V1 went slightly higher, about 10 feet higher. They both spun pretty much the same amount, and the Pro V1 went 2 yards further carry than the Pro V1X. So there's really not a lot in it for me. But the biggest thing I think is the feel. So the Pro V1X has the dual high gradient core where the Pro V1 doesn't, and that is what gives it the firm feeling versus the softer feeling. And it sort of is really up to you. You need to get out and try them both when it comes to picking which ball. So I'm going to start with the Pro V1, straight at that flag. Not bad. It's about 3 yards of fade. That is the feeling that I'm used to. I do really like it. It sort of comes off, it feels like it comes off the club at the right speed for me. It's not, you know, I have hit these clubs maybe a little bit further in testing, certainly with the driver, than maybe what I was used to. That was quality strike, that. Another 1 yard of fade. Oof. I don't usually fade it, so that's nice. Right, Pro V1X, so maybe slightly higher and definitely different feel. Definitely a spinnier flight. Another 1 yard of fade. Gone slightly further than the previous two. Those are pretty good shots. But look, these are really good performing balls. There's obviously a reason why so many top players are using them. The performance was never going to be poor. Again, it's just going to come down to you hitting both balls next to each other, see which one you prefer. And if you're doing these ball tests, you need to do it sort of from green all the way back to the tee. So take them onto the putting green, hit some putts, see which one you prefer the feel of. Again with the chipping, again with pitching, and then back to the driver. And it's only really the mid-iron and driver you should be looking at the data. The rest of it's just more about the feel. But okay, last shot. Bit of a pull. I do feel like those two Pro V1X shots have been spinnier. I don't know whether they've gone higher, but they definitely felt spinnier. That flight in my eye has sort of just hung in the air for a bit longer in that mid-flight, which is where you'd see more spin, and then has probably landed a little bit softer, landed at a slightly steeper descent angle, which is going to give me better control around the greens. I historically have been quite a low player, so the Pro V1X might have helped me when I was a bit younger and playing a little bit more, but I've always stuck to that Pro V1. Not just because I just didn't really know the difference, but definitely different feels. Let's go pick those up and hit some chips and putts and see how we get on. So the secret to the low long game spin, so like the low driver spin on these balls, is the high flex casing layer, which sits in between the cover and then the core of the ball. Now, but the reason we're able to get such high spin out of these balls around the greens is because of Titleist urethane elastomer cover. Now, on wedge shots, we don't compress the ball enough to actually get to that high speed, high flex casing layer, so we just get loads of grab off this super soft cover. So on these short game shots, we get tons and tons of spin on that sort of perfect low groove strike, which is exactly what we want around the greens. So these are both in Pro V1Xs. And I feel quite confident about throwing that a lot of the way there, knowing that it's going to grab. Now that does feel quite firm to me. Again, the Pro V1X is a firmer feeling ball than the Pro V1, but they both generally around the green should spin exactly the same because they do have exactly the same cover. And the Pro V1 will, you know, they should fly exactly the same. You know, it's like a really sharp grab on that second bounce. Those are quite hefty divots. These are really like the industry standard for great feel around the greens. Titleist have pretty much owned this category since the beginning of the Pro V1 25 years ago. So there's absolutely no surprise that these balls feel and react really well on these short game shots. Might go in. Oh, lovely. So look, when it comes to putting, you are not going to really see any performance gain from difference between Pro V1 or Pro V1X. This is all about sound and feel off the putter face. So I've just hit a Pro V1X there. I'm now going to hit a Pro V1 directly afterwards just for comparison. And it is a very distinct difference in sound, or it certainly is to me. I think the Pro V1 sound is like it's a lower pitch noise and just sounds softer, where the Pro V1X, the ball seems to come off, or feels to me like it comes off a little bit faster. I don't know whether it does, might just be pure conjecture, but the Pro V1X, it's like a higher pitch sound. It comes off the face a little bit quicker, and the Pro V1, it just is a little bit softer, a little bit duller sound. I like the feel of both of those, to be fair. The Pro V1, again, is what I'm used to. It's the noise I'm used to hearing. It sounds right in my ear, and the Pro V1X is just a little bit firmer, a little bit higher pitch, maybe a little bit clickier. So if you don't like that, then the Pro V1 might be more for you. But again, you have to hit all these shots when it comes to testing these balls. It's not just all about driver data. You've got to put up with using this ball from anywhere between 70 to 100 shots, depending on how you're playing. So it's got to sort of feel right, it's got to sound right, and the ball flight has to be right in your eye. Otherwise, you're going to find an excuse to blame the ball and not blame yourself like you should be doing. Right, so I've hit both balls now, the new Pro V1 and the old Pro V1. I've got the data here. Now, I know this isn't a perfect test because I am just one person, but what I've tried to do is find two extremely similar strikes and compare the data from the two shots, and I think that's probably the fairest way to do it. Now, the old Pro V1, it was a pretty good shot, so 162 ball speed, which is I'm personally happy with, 14-degree launch, 2,900 spin, which is a little bit high for a 274 carry and a 290 total. Now, I'm not unhappy with that shot. I generally, if I could do that all the way around a golf course, I'd be pretty happy. But the data with the Pro V1 is pretty different, which is really interesting. So ball speed from 161.9 to 163.1, so 1.2 miles an hour faster, which is quite a lot of ball speed just with a ball change. Launch angle was a little bit higher, 14.8 compared to 14.3, but not that much different. The interesting thing here is the spin difference. So this was a pretty similar strike, or as similar as I can produce, and the spins come down from 2924 down to 2400, which is radical. That's like 524 RPM of spin less between those two balls, which is just ridiculous. And that, as a result, gives us some pretty hefty changes in terms of distance. So 274 carry with the old ball to 288 carry with the new ball, which is 14 yards further. You know, that is a lot to gain with just the ball switch. Again, these are basically back-to-back swings and back-to-back strikes, so I'm not doing anything radical to fudge those numbers. And then this is where we see the real magic, the total distance. Because it's launched high with less spin, I've gone from a 290 total to a 308 total, which is like 18 yards total difference in distance, which is insane. The peak height's slightly lower, but not that much different. So if you're a Pro V1 player and you're just going to jump straight into the 2025 Pro V1 like nearly every single tour player has, you are going to be really happy because you're going to get more distance off the tee, lower spin, just like Titleist is saying, but you're also going to have that same touch and feel around the greens that you're used to. The ball's going to spin loads off the wedges and it's going to stop quickly with the mid irons. So you're just going to be really pleased that it's just a direct swap, and it's a massive upgrade in my opinion. The new Pro V1 is great. If you're not a Pro V1 user and you're looking for a tour ball, you've got to go and hit it because the performance is insane. Like I say, I can't guarantee you're going to gain what I've gained, but I'm really happy with that. The Pro V1's pretty much going to go straight in my bag. Let me know in the comments whether you're going to use it. If you're not a Pro V1 user, why are you not a Pro V1 user? Are you going to try the new ball? Because like I say, it's worth trying. But thanks a lot for watching, and if you don't subscribe, then please do. It really helps us get these videos out to more people, and the more people that watch the videos, the more interesting opportunities we get with our content. So thanks a lot for watching.